What's going on, guys? Have you ever found yourself in a repeating situation, something that you keep cycling through, whether you find yourself in the same kinds of relationships, you find yourself having the same kinds of financial challenges, or you find yourself with the same performance challenges, the same kinds of cycles of injuries, or same kinds of thought patterns, really any of these patterns that tend to be self-destructive and that don't lead you to where you ultimately say that you want to go. And if this is the case, which I'm guessing the majority of us are experiencing or have experienced this, because I know that I have plenty of times and I still do. If you are experiencing that, a lot of times it can be due to repeating patterns of belief as well as repeating patterns of emotions, or emotions that might be stored in your body from either past traumatic experiences or just past situations, or programming from society or from your parents, or from your teachers, or any number of things. These things can get stored in us, and we can continue to act out the same patterns and the same cycles a lot of times without even realizing it. And this is when we would find ourselves back in the same situation, looking around, asking, well, how did I end up here again? And what I want to do today is I want to give you a couple tips to help you work through that stuff and help you become more aware of when that's happening. Because when you can become aware of these patterns and these cycles, then you have the first step to then break the pattern or create a new pattern. And before I get into that, I just want to give you a disclosure that the way that I approach things is based upon my own experience and my own research and my own methods that I've developed that work for me. And it's not to say that the way that I do things is the end-all be-all way of doing things. There's many different methods, whether that's breath work or whether that's dancing or whether that's energy work, Reiki, going to see a psychoanalyst. There's so many different ways to navigate these waters, but I am just sharing my experience and what has worked for me. So my invitation to you is just try these ideas on, just like you try on different clothes. Some of them fit good, some of them make you feel good, some of them work for the result that you're after, and some of them don't. And you have the freedom to put different clothes on and take different clothes off. Try different ideas and let go of other ideas that may not be serving you. But my guess is that if you resonate with what I said about going through the same cycles and not liking where you find yourself through those cycles, then you're holding on to some ideas or some patterns that aren't serving you. So the first step in this process of working through these trapped emotions or working through these patterns of thoughts or stories that are leading you to the same place is actually what most people don't fully consider, which is you have to be healthy. You have to have a prerequisite of health in order to deal with these things. And obviously health is a broad word meaning a lot of different things, but what I mean by that is you have to have just a basic prerequisite of overall physical and mental health. And the way to do that is through things that you have complete control over. So eating better quality foods, eating foods that are right for your body, eating better quality or drinking better quality water, drinking enough water, getting to bed on time, making sure you're getting adequate rest, checking in with your breathing, all these different practices. And like I said, these are things that you have control over. These are going to help free up energy, because if your body's already under stress because you're not taking care of yourself from a health standpoint, then you're going to have a very difficult time when it comes to trying to access these deeper layers of things. Just like peeling back an onion, you've got to go one layer at a time. And if you don't thoroughly work through the first layer, you're going to have a hard time accessing the second layer and the third layer and the deeper layer and the deeper layer. So the first layer is just your overall physical health. So once you've gotten that established, once you've been able to free up some energy, a lot of times that in itself will address a lot of the challenges that you are experiencing, because this is a two-way street. A lot of times the self-defeating or self-limiting thoughts and stories and trapped emotions and trapped patterns of behaviors can be addressed through just changing the habits that they're associated with. And when you change the habits, you can better access the thoughts and energy behind that. Because one thing you've got to remember is energy, or emotions rather, are energy in motion. And the way that emotions tend to get trapped is because that energy has not been allowed to move through you. And so if your body is trying to hold on to more energy because it doesn't have the energy, or if it's overly toxic, or it's just under a lot of additional stress, then it's not going to be in a place to want to navigate and work through these other energies that might be manifesting as trapped emotions in the body. So the second stage of this, once you've got a prerequisite of health, is you need to start to grow your awareness. You need to start to see and start to move from reaction to responsibility. Because reaction is usually just your knee-jerk reaction when something triggers you, or you find yourself in a situation and you just do what you've always done. It's just your innate reaction to things. Where responding to things is something that you're choosing. You choose to be responsible. And the way to develop that is through growing that objective awareness and realizing that your thoughts are not you. And the way to develop that is through meditation, or even through journaling, or through breath work, or through dancing. Anything that puts you in a space where you can just objectively see what's going on without attaching yourself to it. Kind of like a lifeguard on the lifeguard tower, where he or she is looking at what's going on, but they're not running down and trying to fix every little problem. They're just getting an overall view of what's going on, just getting an objective view. So the more you grow that capacity within yourself, the more you grow your responsibility, the more you grow that gap in between what's happening, the trigger, the stimulus, and then what you're choosing to do with that. And this is the fundamental thing that's going to help you start to see the patterns within yourself, because you're going to start to see the stories that might be playing themselves out over and over and over again in your head, that are leading to the same actions and leading to the same behaviors and habits that are recreating the reality that you're experiencing. And the same thing is true when it comes to trapped emotions. And the thing you got to realize is that the body and the mind are mirrors of one another, because fundamentally they come from the same place. It's all energy and information. It's just different levels of that energy and information. So once you do begin to grow that awareness, once you do begin to see what's going on and you grow your responsibility, you can start to make changes. You can choose a different response to something. If you find yourself in a certain cycle of action, or a certain cycle of emotions, or a certain trigger, you can start to choose something different because now you've developed that space that allows you to respond. And the last step of this, which kind of builds on the second step, is that you have to actively choose new patterns. It's one thing to become aware of something, but then the next step is you have to choose something different. So the thing when it comes to trapped emotions in the body, that's, again, this is something that can be addressed in many different ways. But for me personally, in my own experience, I find that emotions that get trapped are typically associated with thought patterns and ways of being. Again, it could be something even all the way stemming back from childhood, but regardless, they're there and they're present in your current reality. And the reason why it's so important to grow your awareness is because these things can be very triggering to work with, because they can take you back into that experience if you're not in a space to be able to hold the tension, or to be able to hold your own space, to be able to handle whatever comes up and not get overly attached to it. And so, again, I find that whenever there's any kind of trapped emotion or anything associated with that, then I try to find what stories are associated with that, because emotions typically come from the meaning that we place on things, which usually are a reflection of our perspective in the stories that we hold, and the stories in the beliefs that we hold. So once we realize all of this and we start to put all these pieces together, then we can start to change and rewire what's actually going on, so that when we find ourselves in that situation, again, we can choose something different. Or when we find these different emotions coming up, we don't have to attach ourselves to them. We can recognize them, and we can also see the meaning behind them and the stories behind the meaning. Because again, just an example of this, so you guys can see what I mean. So for instance, the liver has a lot to do with anger, energetically and emotionally. So if you find that you might find yourself easily triggered into anger, there could be that your liver is just overburdened, and that is making it more likely to get into that emotional pattern. It could also be that you've had an experience in your life, or multiple experiences in your life, where anger has been your outlet. And you also may have experienced where you felt that anger was your outlet, but you didn't feel like you could express that. And so therefore it gets trapped energetically in the energetic organ. And when you recognize that, then not only can you do physical things like detoxifying your liver, because that could help out with that, but you can also see where the stories are coming from that attribute to the meaning that you attach to the situation that produces the reaction of anger. For example, if I think that somebody, what they did was wrong, and they did this thing to me, and therefore it made me angry, and that's the story that I tell myself. So you got to realize, people can't give you emotions. You can only create the emotions within yourself in response to something. So if somebody did something to me and I felt angry about it, but I didn't feel like I could thoroughly express that, because maybe it was my parent when I was young, or whatever that might have been, and I didn't feel safe expressing that, then I held on to it, and then it got trapped. But again, this is a two-way street. You can do breath work, you can dance, you can work things out physically, you can shake things out, get things out of your body. But you can also recognize the pattern of the thought and the story that manifested itself into that emotion. And you can also address that way. So, three layers to this. One, you've got to take care of your general physical health. You've got to have the resources on board to even do this kind of work. Two, you've got to grow your awareness. You've got to grow your responsibility. Three, you've got to create new patterns. and you've got to install those new patterns and wire those new patterns and practice those new patterns. And you have to be able to hold the space for yourself to allow whatever to come up, come up. And this is where, going back to the awareness point, when things do come up, you have a choice with how you choose to respond to them. A lot of people think that, you have to, express everything. But in my experience, you can still feel things, you can still process things, but you can still maintain your equanimity through that process. You can still ride the waves of life, but you don't have to get so emotionally flustered or emotionally triggered by the waves of life. I know this is a little deeper discussion, but this stuff is important, because this is where real change can happen and real transformation can happen. So I hope this was valuable for you. And if you have any further questions or need any further guidance in this area, feel free to reach out, and I'd love to open up the dialogue with you about that, or continue to expand on this topic in future videos. But for now, I wish you the best in your journey, sending you much love through your journey. I know how challenging these things can be, and this is stuff that I'm constantly working on within myself. So I have empathy for you. And with that, if you found this valuable, please subscribe, leave us a thumbs up, comment, share with as many people as possible. And I look forward to talking to you again soon.